Well, welcome everybody. This is the Days of the Dead Film Festival. I am Brittany Reyes, and I'll be moderating this panel today. We will be covering the sound of fear and audio in horror movies. Audio is just a very important part of making a film, making any sort of media creation, and I feel that like in horror movies it kind of gets swept under the rug unless you know what you're talking about or what to ask. And so I have two really awesome guests up here today to ask some questions to and chat about what it goes into making a horror movie from the audio aspects. And so with me today is Bob Singleton. He is the creator of the, and I'm going to screw this
Anathema.
up. Anathema. He's the creator of the Anathema series. And then we have Connor Rose, who was a sound designer. I don't know what your title is. This is Connor Rose, and he's done a lot of amazing things in audio for horror movies. I'll let you guys introduce yourself after I butchered that. So, Bob.
Okay. So I'm Bob Singleton. I've been a movie, TV buff since birth, raised on a steady diet of Abbott Costello, Stooges, Muppet Show, Speed Racer. In the 70s, I discovered the joy of creative writing. In the 80s, I started making flipbook animations and doing short films on Super 8. And basically, since then, I've been telling stories on the stage, film, print, internet, since.
Yeah, so I'm Connor Rose. I'm a film student at IU. I have like one more semester left, finishing it up there. And my big thing is doing sound design and like sound mixing, and both production and mostly in post-production. And yeah, that's what I like doing and what I do.
Right on. So as you can see, we have like a wide range of experience and skill up here. And I guess the first thing we can start with is kind of like what drew you guys to audio specifically within the world. I think you guys have both worn other hats in the industry. And so what keeps you coming back to audio?
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I don't really know when exactly I realized that audio was what I really enjoyed. I think it probably started with like being really into like film scores, so like John Williams, Hans Zimmer, like that kind of thing, and then just kind of honing in on like just audio in general and like realizing just how much sound effects make or break. Like visuals like can be incredible, but if the sound isn't up to par with that, you know, how much it can detract. And just I guess realizing how powerful audio is kind of just really drew me in, and I fell in love with doing it.
Yeah, so I'm one of those multi-hyphenates. Basically, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, so I've been photographer, videographer, editor, effects, sound. But then, yeah, like you'd said, the movie scores were always a big thing with me, even way back. And the way the music would bring things in was really something. And then as I got older, I got to appreciate the effect that the sound effects, the sound design, the ambience could have, and that's something I really, really dug.
Nice. Okay. And so when it comes to pre-production and kind of conceptualizing the ideas that you're working on, whether you're working with the director of something or it's a piece that you've created yourself, how does sound come into that? Are you thinking about sound and audio from the beginning of the project? Is it something that comes later? Does it depend on the project?
So I guess, yeah, it definitely depends. But like, I would say like for pre-production, like I've had like a director, like he knows that I'm gonna do like the sound design and post. Like there's a film, he came to me, he was like, we're gonna have a guy crawl out from inside of a corpse. And so, you know, I know
it's
that so far before, you know, even the filming happens. So I'm already starting to think about, you know, what sounds will I need to like have when this gets passed down to me. So there is an element of like if I know what is going to be filmed, like already starting to accrue like sound effects, start recording things, start having things ready to go, just to like expedite like the post-production process and stuff.
So for me, I don't have no regular process. Every time is a little bit unique. Sometimes I'll have a really solid idea in my head way ahead of time for what I want the project to sound like, to feel like before I start. You know, the sound dictating my creation in the edits. For example, introduction and closing motion graphics and title cards. I do con videos with Jay Menstle's Geeks and Me radio show. We go attend the cons, and I like to do a motion graphic design with a musical composition before it. And usually I tie that to the guest, James Marsters. I have, you know, classical music with some kind of hard rock built into it, with late Nichelle Nichols, you know, kind of ethereal, spacey tones. Other times the edit's dictating my music. I worked on a fight week preparation video for MMA competitor Joaquin Buckley, and I had a rough idea of what I was looking for, and so I'm kind of editing along and making good progress, and then I kind of just hit a stalling point and wasn't really sure, so I kind of put the edit aside and started working on the music, came up with a piece I really, really liked, and then brought that back to the edit, and then was able to time the edit to the music, and it kind of worked that way. So sometimes this way, sometimes that way, and
Okay. So it depends a little bit on the project, I guess. As far as being a writer and a sound coming in your head when you are writing, like what does sound like to you before it hits the paper?
yeah, you know, that's amazing. I have always been a visual audio dreamer. So when I have dreams, I hear the sounds, I see things. The same kind of thing goes with my writing. As I'm going along, you know, the characters will speak to me. They will tell me what they're going to say, but then as they're saying things, things will happen around them, and the sounds come into my mind. A lot of times it comes right there with it. Other times after I finish a piece, I'm going in and doing a re-edit, and I'm writing, I'm like, oh, you know what would sound really good here? And then I can, you know, dictate those sound instructions in there.
Right. And as far as music goes, are you guys both like classically trained? What's your background in music?
So I don't really do much in terms of like composing and that kind of thing. I guess I play the violin. I learned the violin all the way back in middle school, but like in terms of like score and composition and stuff, it's mostly just a composer giving me something to mix in with everything else. I don't really have much in that regard, I guess.
So back in grade school, I was kind of a music geek. I did the grade school 5th, 6th, 7th grade choir. I did band from 8th grade through senior year, John Philip Sousa Award. I did not take my music much further than that in terms of formal studies. I would pick up little things here and there, mouth harp, harmonica, just nothing, you know, like that. So one of the things I like to say is in almost all of my musical compositions, no real instruments are ever harmed during the composing of any of my projects. I rely a lot. I use my Mac with Logic Pro 10, and got some beautiful synthetic instrument samples that sound almost real. I have a keyboard, I can read music, and I'll kind of plug away that way with it, with notes, with sounds. I like to compose with non-traditional instruments. I like to use sounds, winds, noises.
So let's talk about the collaboration between different roles. And yes, let's talk about the collaboration.
I can talk about that. So, yeah, I guess that kind of ties into what I was just talking about with, like, you know, usually I'm working with, like, a composer. So, like, a lot of times, like, at least, like, in the post-production realm of audio, you know, when it comes down to, like, doing a final mix, you have, like, a score that a composer is really proud of, a sound design that, like, lots of sound effects that the sound designer is really proud of. You have, the dialogue that was recorded on set. You have all of these different elements that different groups are very like attached to. And so when that final mix comes around, there's a lot of conflict resolution you have to deal with like, why is my score not the highlight of this scene? Why, like, I can't hear the dialogue, there's too much score, like, and so that back and forth, I feel like, is one of the biggest, like, difficulties with, like, collaboration, and when you get, like, a team that is really good about getting all of those elements together, that's when I think a film can be really successful.
That's when the magic happens.
Yeah.
So normally, most of my projects, I kind of have the full control on the audio, whether it's like the convention stuff or my own projects that I'm doing teaser for or whatnot. But I do have a collaborative example. One of my dearest friends, most frequent collaborators, stuntman Brian Peters, lives in Chicago. I'm in St. Louis. He was participating in the 48-hour film project. Many years I would make the quick little hop to Chicago and do whatever, and we'd done some really great stuff. But this particular time, he felt he was pretty well staffed, and so I'm like, okay, cool, save myself a little gas, no biggie. Then, they draw, if you're not familiar with how the 48-hour works, you draw out of a hat, basically. You get a genre or two genres to pick from, and then they give you a line of dialogue, a prop, and a character name that has to appear in it. So they had done that, and they usually start writing frantically Friday evening and filming as fast as they can on Saturday. And so, maybe around 11 on Saturday morning, I get a message from Brian, and he's like, so, hey, can you help me with some stingers, some little bites audio? And I'm like, okay, cool. I love working with you. When can I see the video? And he's like, there's nothing ready yet. And I'm like, okay. So then he sends me the script, and I'm reading through it, and it was a really great script. I was excited about it, and instantly had ideas, popping in my head, fired up the Mac, started digging in, and did like 5-10 minutes of stingers, ambient sounds, whooshy noises. I'm very Lynch in that sense. And I sent him, a bunch of this, and then a little while later, I hear back from him. He's like, okay, so let's see. He's like, great stuff. Okay, at the 35-second mark, I need it more stabby. And, at 2:13, can you draw it out another 5 seconds? At 3:45, can you make the tone kind of shift midway? And so we went back and forth on that for a while, and then we had it. And it's the first time I've ever scored anything remotely. It's the first time I've ever scored anything without having seen the footage. And it ended up really amazing. But it was one of the most unique collaborative efforts ever. It was a challenge.
Yeah, it's going in blind. But it seems like it also helped elevate the experience a little bit because it still worked out well. And
part of that, I think, also is good is that it kept us isolated so that we weren't polluting each other's ideas.
Right.
He had an idea of what he wanted for it. I had my ideas, and then we would just start bouncing those ideas off until we kind of found that happy medium, and then what ultimately not worked for him or I, but what worked for the film. And then, yeah.
So in a perfect world, what would you focus on entirely when it comes to audio? Or if you were working on your project, your dream baby, and your dream baby, what would that look like? What does that sound like to you as far as the collaboration goes? Is it something that you're handling? What are you looking forward to trying next in the world of sound? And
yeah, so I guess if it's my dream baby that I'm working on, I feel like whenever it's something that's like super personal to me, I become so much more of like a control freak in that regard. Like wanting to I would want to do all of the audio. Like I wouldn't want somebody else to do the audio on like my thing, But if it's like what is like my favorite thing to do in sound, I think it would be probably like sound design, like creating like sound effects and like creating like soundscapes for like a world or something like that, where the like actual like creation of what things sound like, I guess, is where I think the most fun.
Well, most of my projects are dream babies. That's really maybe not quite on that angle, but something to enable the most successful birth. If I'm working on a project for myself or someone else, I tell you, always get the best sound you can in the field when you're shooting with the actors. It's easier, more believable, a lot higher quality when you're capturing that than doing ADR. I mean, ADR, automatic dialogue replacement, can work great, but it's just not the same. I mean, what you pay as a filmmaker for your sound person is not an expense. It is an investment. And that is the one investment in this world that always pays off in buckets. If you get the best sound person you can get, they're going to capture that raw material, and you're going to, see, now that would have been really good to capture that one. You get, if you've got that raw material, for myself, if the sound guy's done their job right, it makes it so much easier for me. And whether, if it's just something I'm doing and I'm not mixing, making sure you've got the raw materials. And as far as Dream Babies, a lot of my projects I just keep self-contained, and I just kind of build them based on the story, based on that. Some examples, if you go to the Days of the Dead's YouTube playlist for trailers for this year's films, I actually did teasers for my 4 screenplays that were in competition, and I had no footage shot for any of them. I used motion graphics, I used animations, but the biggest part of them is sound design. I've got audio, sound, music to be able to try and convey in 15 seconds what this script is going to be about. And so I guess some examples you could take a look at there.
Incredible. Well, I think I'll open up the discussion to the crowd now, see if anybody has any questions. I think that was a good note to end on, because a lot of the times on the field is where sound gets looked over, and people don't know what to ask. So we've got 2 great folks right here, and let's see.
When you're working on one of your productions, what is your best DAW you like to use for your audio program to work with?
Yeah, so this is funny. So I'm still at Indiana University, like I had mentioned, and they give you access to like the Adobe suite through that. So I've just been, Audition is like the main thing that I've been using. As soon as that like gets cut off for me, I'm sure Pro Tools will be what I move over to. I mean, that's the industry standard. It's what everybody wants you to be using. It's what everybody does use. So I guess, yeah.
As a filmmaker, I've been Apple Mac centric since the beginning. I had bought the first, was it the iMac DV Special Edition? It was a nice little Frost one, and it was the first one to have their DVD recording software on it, and it had iMovie and GarageBand, and I kind of just started in that, and then I for years was just using that software then, and then I moved up to the original Final Cut Pro, and then the original Logic, and then to the newer versions. And yeah, I use Logic Pro for just about everything, because it's got great audio control tools. It really works well with the Final Cut Pro software, being able to render audio back and forth, bounce it, and not just for the basic audio controls and mastering of what is there. It has some amazing composition tools. I can pull out my keyboard and just generate some amazing synth stuff. John Carpenter, such an inspiration. And so, yeah, all the Mac stuff.
Any other questions?
Hi. So there's a lot of like tech stuff, programs you can use, easy to help. But do you feel like there's sort of, with some people, just like an instinct and a talent you just kind of got to have and feel that's hard to train for people?
I've known some people that, they live, eat, breathe, drink music and sound, that there's a knack for it. But I've always been of the belief that anybody can learn it. It's a skill for certain, and for some it's a talent. but that, I mean, if you train yourself, if you listen carefully to movies, you know, you listen to the scores, if you truly absorb what's there, I mean, anybody could do it. You know, you have to do it a lot to be able to do it well. At least that's my end. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I very much agree. Like, I think that's just kind of like everything in life. Like, people have like they lean towards certain things, they're better at certain things, but yeah, just and with enough work and with enough just like learning and doing things, you know, you'll get to where you need to get eventually.
Yeah, I just personally, because I've had people like just like teach stuff too, but I'm like, sometimes you just feel it, and I can't teach the feeling. You know, like you're just gonna. But a lot of it, yes, that's great. I like your answer because experience will build that feeling and stuff like that. But yeah.
It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it's going to get, the better its reflexes will be, the further range of motion you're going to have.
What were some of the tools that were the most impactful in you building your craft and finding your place within audio and, you know, getting, like you say, you like sound design the most, and what kind of got you there? And with you, like with band and your background with the music, what got you to, all right, I like this part as well within film, you know, like I'm not just going to stick to my writing or editing, you know, what keeps you coming back?
I think
that was like 7 questions
Yeah.
in one. Sorry, guys. That's how I do. Torpedo. Okay.
in terms of like what keeps me really enjoying doing like sound effects and stuff, I think there's something that just feels so magical about, like, you know, you get handed a product and like there'll be like long stretches where it might as well be like a silent movie. Like they're just like, if it's like, you know, like a fight scene or something, like they're just like swinging and like you see like all of the like, you know, like effects and stuff, but it's just like you don't feel it, you know. And so bringing in like the impact of like those hits, you know, if there's like a blood splatter, if there's like all of these things, and like the way that just like breathes life into a scene, like there's just something about that feeling that I really love.
I guess what brought me into it was, as a very independent filmmaker, aka broke as heck,
Belt.
I found that I had to do it myself. It wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. I mean, I have people I would love to hire for these kind of things, but so often it's not there. It's a personal project or something like that. And so for me, it was a matter of learning to do it because I needed it done, and then going beyond that, it's like, hey, this is actually kind of fun. I'm really digging this. It's another method of creativity, another way to bring the world, the universe of the project to life.
And so what were some of the most helpful resources and things that were tools for you guys in getting to where you are in your craft today?
Yeah, I think what has been really nice for me with doing like sound design and stuff is, like, nowadays there's so many like online like sound libraries and stuff that you can reference, so you can kind of see, like, you can hear how a lot of these sound effects sound. And a lot of times, you know, when you go in there, it'll like kind of lay out like in the names or whatever, like what they used for these sounds. And like, I don't know, I guess the biggest tool for me I would just say like the internet, like being able to be like, you know, in this movie I really like how they did like the sound design in this film, like, and then you can kind of look into like what did they use, like how did they create this soundscape and stuff. And so just, I guess, being inspired by what other people have done and learning from that.
Yeah, actual tools. I'm a movie collector, so I've had Laserdisc, DVDs, whatnot. And so having that there, being able to listen to them, you know, any of these movies that you get with commentaries can be so informative, not just for learning about sound, but for the entire process of filmmaking, that it's so much insight. It's its own kind of film school. As far as the physical tools, yeah, the fact that when I bought an iMac, I had software that was easy to use, that I could compose music, record audio, edit video, and export it to a disc. I mean, having that kind of capability just to start freed me from the limitations of not being able to deliver that, then giving me the ability or the room to grow further. I didn't have to worry about the tools. I could worry about the art.
Right. Awesome. Any other questions?
I do. I've worked on, you were talking about the 48-hour film festival. I worked on a local 48-hour when they did it. But one of the big challenges we had on set was capturing Foley and capturing certain sound effects. What are some of the struggles you guys had on some of the projects you've had, and maybe some of the tricks that you came up with on some of these struggles to get that sound out the way you wanted?
I mean, in terms of like struggles with recording sound, I feel like so often like the scariest places you can find, the most like, oh, this is so good for like a horror film or something. Like they're like the noisiest places you can think of, because it's like we found like a creepy basement, but that's also where all of the machinery that runs the whole building is. So it's like it sounds horrible, you know. And so, yeah, a lot of it is like with like specific things like that, like trying to like turn off everything you can in like a room. You know, there's a lot of hot sets I've been on because we've been like, we have to turn the air conditioning off, we have to unplug the fridge, we have to like completely dismantle this entire house, and
remember to turn the fridge back on. That's
Yeah.
always the worst.
Yeah, and so you
Into
know,
a stinky house.
But yeah, and then with regards to like Foley and stuff, like yeah, it's a lot of that, you know, can be done, you know, after the shooting in like a better location. Then it comes down to just being able to mix it in with the rest, I guess. And with 48 hours, that's a lot harder, but
And I guess I'm more speaking towards bigger projects.
Yeah.
Not on a 48-hour time span.
right, yeah.
Yeah, location scouting can be crucial. I mean, if the people running sound can work with the director and the location manager, and you know, to kind of work together to help eliminate the problems before they occur, finding places that maybe, you know, have less machinery, or they've got quiet spaces, or you have the ability to turn certain things on and off, where you can have some greater control over the environment. More often than not, no, it's just, you know, the environment's not there, and so that's again where a great sound guy can come in, or gal. The sound person can, you know, mic actors in a certain way, you know, using, you know, the hidden lobs or something. They can have a better idea of where to boom. They can know what they're going to have to do to it in the future, and then take those steps when they're on the location to make sure to still get that, you know, maybe not when the cameras are rolling, you know, for that fill in, and work around it. But I mean, there's always going to be something. And I found, you know, if you are recording, you know, clips, you know, I've got a little Zoom H4n Pro, and I'll take it around when I'm doing whatnot. And if I hear something in a room or building, I'm just wherever whatnot, you know, or, you know, the iPhone, it's got a great little voice recorder app. I can't tell you the number of times I've been somewhere where there was a really great flickering fluorescent bulb that was just going out or something, and I turn on the audio recorder and I get it up there and I get that, and or I just like the sound of, you know, water in a fountain or something, and just kind of building that little library of little clips that you may never use, but at some point there may be one where you're going, oh my God, I've got that file right there. This will be perfect here. And you know, if you capture them when you find them, you never know when you're going to be able to use them.
It's really great. Well, do we have any other questions?
If not, I've got a direction we can go off on.
I guess, how do you balance when sound needs to take center stage versus dialogue and not hearing, sound kind of disappearing a little bit? It's there, but yet you're, you know, where it kind of, I guess I'm trying to ask, how do you work with, is that something where you may throw in, I think sound should be here a little more dynamic, or how much collaboration goes into those?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. If it's a project you're working on with someone else, if I'm working with Brian on something, he's doing the film, he's the director, I'm handling some sound stuff. Yeah, it's very much a collaborative effort. I like to give my input. Like, hey, at this point, I think that the sound is important, the background noise, or because sometimes there might be a line of dialogue you might want to bury it with the sound because of what is going on. Sometimes you've got to have that just right, and so. Yeah, if you're working with somebody, it's a give or take. If it's your own project, well then, I like this, and you can kind of go off in whatever direction you like.
Yeah, I would agree that it just really depends on who you're working with and how you're working with them, because sometimes a director will have a very clear vision of like, this is how I want it to sound, and then other times it'll fall to like whoever's mixing it and like maybe like the composer or somebody, and in those situations becomes more of like a push and pull and like coming up with compromises about where that'll happen. But yeah, it really does just come down to everybody who's involved just working together and coming to a conclusion on how they think what best serves the film at the end of the day.
That's great. Let's talk about the role of audio in horror. We've mentioned some really great names in horror already and the impact that they've made. We've had, like if you say David Lynch, you know what it's going to sound like, what that world's going to look like. John Carpenter, even now to him working with his son and just it being a family effort, everything in between. I was at the theater watching a newer horror film, and I was thinking about how this is so different from James Wan and how he's so loud in his scares. There's still a jump scare, but the audio that comes with it is very much a Wan thing, as opposed to somebody else who may have a very silent feel and then the monster jumps out at you. And so how does that work? And what do you guys like what do your world sound like? If it's a Connor film, why? If it's a Bob film, why?
Yeah. So I guess in terms of like what I really enjoy sound wise, I think there's something really powerful about like the ominous like silence that you can get. Like I recently watched this film. It's called The Cure. It's a like J horror from the 90s. And the entire film, there's just this like really low drone the entire time. Like no matter what scene it is, like it'll be completely quiet and you'll hear it. It'll be really loud and it's still there, just like haunting you. And there's something about just that like presence that just leaves you feeling like really tense. And I think just like being able to use sound as like an undercurrent to just make an audience like uneasy the whole time is something that I really like and think's really cool.
Yeah, Lynch, his work has been just a big influence on me. I got my MFA at his graduate school up in Fairfield, and so I got to interview him once. I asked him about the importance of music, and for him, he said it's marrying the sound and the image. The idea that if you've got an image, the sound has to work with it. It might be the greatest piece of sound or music ever, but it just didn't work at all with the picture, so you got to put it aside and use it in another thing. So yeah, my scoring is a lot of ambient, a lot of drones, a lot of natural noises, that kind of thing. If you think about it, the horror films, the sound has been an important thing since before there were sound films. If you think Nosferatu, the original black and white, silent film, but there was a musical score composed to it that in the old theaters, they'd be playing it on the organ. It really brought that thing to life. You could say the names of certain films and things are just going to pop into your head. If, Psycho, the shower scene. Okay, you never, the Bernard Herrmann score, you'll never forget that. But then if you think about it, when you see that scene, you never actually see Marion getting stabbed. You hear the noise, but you feel it as opposed to actually seeing it. I'm trying, what was the other one I was saying? Predator. horror adjacent. Thing takes off his mask and that little clicking noise. You know instantly what it is, and it has that effect. Misery. Annie's there and breaks that leg. Boy, you never forget that sound. An example of less is more. A Quiet Place. Anybody seen Quiet Place, the original one? Okay. So there's an example where, the whole film is mastered very low, just the lightest things. And the effect of that is kind of destabilizing. You get accustomed to that. And so that then when a sound occurs, somebody makes a noise, it's like, oh, something's going to happen. And it really, it plays on you that the effects that can have, that you could even just listen to a movie. That's a great thing sometimes. You want to know how powerful a scene is or whatnot, close your eyes and just listen to it. And if you've seen it before and you just listen to it, you can see the film in your head. And that's always my goal, is that I can create audio that maybe the video isn't even necessary, but that together it works with it and really just develops up a stronger piece of art.
That's great. Any other questions from the crowd? Oh, there we go. Water break. Dr. Pepper break. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming up here with us today. That was really great and informative. There's so much in the world of audio and sound, and it's really great to go over how it impacts horror, because I think we're obviously all here. Yes?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Right after you asked, now I'm thinking of it. Is there, and this may have been asked and answered, I'm sorry if I got here late, is there a number one rule to check or do at the process, maybe at the beginning or at the end? If it's at the end, like if it's the final project, is there one last step that has to be done to ensure that everything like transfers the correct way or hits the right pitch and audio? Because that's always a bane for me when we're matching all the different films that come in, because they all have different things that were used. So being a novice in that, I'm using the programs and the suggestions and the things that people give to make it an even kill experience. So this is not just for everyone else, this is for me too.
Kind of like mastering a
Right.
Yeah.
band album after you mix it.
Yeah. I guess, and it does kind of, I feel like a lot of people have different opinions on where, levels should fall within like a final mix. Some people want everything to be pushing right at like clipping, like very close to like, being too loud to even be played, right? And then some people like a more subtle, like very close together sound levels, I guess. And like really the like number one rule would just be, I guess, to make sure that it doesn't like clip, that it doesn't go so loud that you're losing data, you're losing like audio, that everything stays within like a register that people can hear and can be played.
One thing I definitely like to take into account, one thing I like to do is to listen to the final mix in multiple venues, multiple formats. Sometimes I'm mixing, I'll have my real nice over-ear headphones on. So then, I've done that, but then, okay, I want to render it out and I want to listen to it on, an iPad. I want to run it through my little 30-inch TV. I want to run it through my Dolby Atmos system with the 8 speakers, 9 speakers. Trying it in those different venues, seeing how it compares. And, ultimately, if you know exactly how and where that film will be delivered, that can really be helpful. You can go at that. Now, I know a lot of time in the professional things, they will have different mixes for
The different
like the Atmos theaters. They'll put in one mix. They'll do a different one in IMAX. They'll do a whole new mix for home video. But if you don't know that, listening to the final product on multiple devices is key, because then if you hear something that's a problem on one, you don't hear it on the others, then it may be strictly related to that device. If you hear a problem that's consistent on all of them, you've got to fix something.
And that one where because we meet a lot and we're like, hey, or someone watched a movie, it's like, hey, the sound is not doing this, and then we figure out it's one specific place, and it's always a specific platform that has this problem. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's definitely essential to mobile on a lot of those. Like on the computer, it's fine. On your TV, it's fine. But if it's mobile on this particular one, it's always a problem. So it's like, okay, now we've learned, don't do it on that one, or don't try to do it if you're judging like for best sound, because we give that award. It's like, okay, go back and make sure you're watching it on, on something else so you can get the best quality sound. So that's good advice, and I appreciate that, because everything, it's always constantly changing. And so I know that was a challenge for us at the beginning, just getting the films in a certain way, trying to make sure they were all uniform, the H.264, MP, the sound, and that has made a world of difference, because one pitch will be super loud on the film before that, even though they were ran through the program all together. So thank you. I appreciate that.
That was a really great question, and I think just to piggyback off of that a little bit is even asking other folks, like your friends, family, like not just, hey, can you watch this for me, but what did it sound like, and remembering to ask that aside from the thing as a whole, because there are times where I've even watched something and I didn't really like it, but I didn't realize that it was the sound I wasn't liking, not what I was seeing, or just how those two things marry together.
Yeah, people can forgive bad picture in a film and not think of it, and they'll still watch it and still enjoy it if the sound is really clicking and really there. If you've got the most beautiful 70 millimeter IMAX print, great cinematography, beautiful vistas, if your sound is crap, people are just it's gonna take them out of it. And if you've got pops and hisses, and you're gonna lose them.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming up here and chatting with us today. I think a lot of that was all of it was super insightful. I'm sorry that I asked 7 questions all at once every time. But moving forward, where can we find you guys? What are you up to? And there we go again. That was 2 and 1. So we'll end it on that.
We have 2 hands each.
So, just specific to like today, at 2 p.m., the film Laid Bare, I was the post-production supervisor, and then I did the final sound mix on that. So that'll be screening sometime between 2 and 3. So yeah, that's what I've got like right now going on.
Typically, I have multiple things going on. 2 in particular. I'm finishing out my first horror comedy screenplay. I'm trying to. Everything is usually horror centric for me, and I'm kind of going the comedy route. A screenplay called Escalation, inspired by decades of mall and retail hell that I've managed to survive. Now, years ago, I met the legend Lloyd Kaufman during his book tour for A Most Amazing Book. If you're interested in filmmaking, all I needed to know about filmmaking, I learned from the Toxic Avenger. And he is such a gentleman, such a genius, such a goofball. I went to his book tour and met him. He asked what I was doing at the time, told him, and he told me to give him a part. And unfortunately, at the time, that project was not mine to give a part to. And so I had started working on this horror comedy, and I thought, I promised Lloyd to give him a part. So now I've written a part specifically for him as a mayor. Other than that, I've got a supernatural Western I'm doing a rewrite on, and one of the lead characters was inspired by my late mentor, Emmy winner, Riff Fournier. And ironically, when I was making the Dreamcast for the list, there was only one actor I could think of that could play him, and that's Michael Ironside, and he's here this week and whatnot. But you can find me on the socials at the Bob Singleton, or if you're really interested, you can come up and scan that little barcode on the poster for my series there, and it'll take you to all my links. But thank you. This was great.
Thank you. All right, guys.
Thank you all so much.
Stay spooky.